Welcome. I'd like to welcome all the candidates for the Township Committee and everybody that is running for the Board of Education. This is CILU, Citizens for Informed Land Use. Our mission is to promote government decision-making based on open communications with an informed electorate and a nonpartisan public debate. During my tenure, the CILU Board has maintained its nonpartisan position. People will say what they would like to say about us, but I know that we have been fastidious and being very careful of being unbiased in dealing with issues. We rarely will make public statements, and it's approved by the board, and we'll say from the executive board of CILU. But we all maintain our First Amendment right as citizens to speak. So when people are speaking that might be from CILU or from the board, they're speaking on their behalf. Okay. Our plan is to, by the way, because of the success of tonight and the support we've gotten, our plan is to have these types of forums in the future. So because I know a lot of people have shown a lot of interest in this. I want to go over the ground rules. Initially, the Township Committee candidates will speak. I want to let you know that extraordinary efforts have been put in to invite all the candidates. Multiple registered mails have gone out to them. Multiple emails have gone out to them. People have, I personally have called and invited them. Other people in the community have reached out to them because we'd like them to participate. I have been informed this evening indirectly that the candidates, the Republican candidates, might show up later. Our meeting was set for 7:30, so we're going to start on time and proceed. Okay, let me go over the ground rules for tonight. Okay, each candidate will have 2 minutes to present an opening statement. Here's a big question: which one of you guys want to go first? Ladies first. There we go. We dispense with a coin toss. Okay. The audience, as you know, there are 5x8 cards. Fill out your questions and bring them to one of our helpers, and they'll get it up to the moderator. We will sort them and read them as based on their category and their priority, and with the amount of time that we have available. The candidate to whom the question is directed will have 2 minutes. If there's an opposing candidate, they will have a 1-minute response. If the question is directed to all candidates, there will be 1 minute. We're going to dispense with the yellow cards and red cards. We've got a timer, okay? When the light's on, talk. When the light goes off, please conclude your statement, okay? If you abuse it, there will be penalties.
I will glower.
At the end of the question period, each candidate will give a 2-minute summation. The order summation will be reversed. Okay? And as I said, the Board of Ed candidates will have an opportunity when that concludes to make a brief presentation to the audience. Okay? The moderator for tonight is Jenny Blumenthal. And we're going to start.
And I also would appreciate it if there was no applause from the audience and no vocalizations of any sort. You may sneeze, but no other vocalizations. So I am being given these cards that are being sorted by intellectual content. We also don't want to have the same question 15 times, and if you get an inspiration in the middle, just go to the table by the door and get another card and write it down so that we can take a look at it. Also, anytime, feel free to get up. The coffee's hot, it's decaf, and munch.
Okay,
So
so we got the first opening statement.
We
so
have the
everybody-
first opening statement from Barbara Singer.
Thank you.
And you can either go to the podium or stand at the table or sit, or it's probably
Whatever
not
you're
good. Yeah, don't sit on the floor.
Well, I have enough energy right now to get up to the podium, so I'll start there. I want to thank CILU, first of all, for hosting this event. I think it is a great opportunity for the residents to hear from the candidates and for us to also hear your questions and know what your concerns are. As many doorbells as we have rung already and groups we have spoken to, there are faces here that I'm not familiar with, so I will go through some background information, and for those of you who know it, just bear with me. I am an attorney. I've been practicing law since 1995, and I've been in the legal field since before then, so for about 30 years. One of the things I think that Township Committee can use are some candidates with legal background. It definitely helps with all the ordinances and everything that they need to analyze and put together. I'm certainly hoping that being on the Township Committee as an attorney would help us to avoid some lawsuits which the Township has had to entertain in the last couple of years, which is one of the reasons I ended up getting involved a couple of years ago in what was going on in town. It was at the request of residents who were involved in it. And that kind of just made me question as an attorney what's going on around here. So one of the things that I saw that I would like to kind of fix is to have more input from the community. I felt that there was not enough of that going on, and that's something that I would want to have at the Township Committee, residents being comfortable to come in and to speak and to know that they're heard and have some more input. Can't always please everybody, but we can always listen to everybody. And I think that's where we need to start, with just some respect. And from there, we can take our differing viewpoints and try to work toward our common goals together. Okay?
Yeah, this sort of means they got about 30 seconds.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, I know the red card.
Yeah.
Get off the
I'm not
podium.
kicking you out of the game.
Well, listen, it's, I actually just hit a timer. My kid showed me how to use it the other day. So. Good evening. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak to everybody. My name is Larry Luttrell. I am married to Renee Luttrell now for going on 16 years. We have 3 lovely daughters. We lived in Holmdel since 2003. It was actually our dream to move to Holmdel. Both of us grew up in Hazlet. The reason we're running is I don't like the direction our town is heading. It's not like it's a major issue, but it's one that's going to be a major issue down the road. It's essentially the amount of development that's been going on. It doesn't seem that we have a handle on it. Recently we put forward an affordable housing settlement agreement, which frankly is something I disagree with wholeheartedly. But ultimately, it doesn't seem like there's enough differing voices on the existing Township Committee in order to challenge what we're being told by the professionals that the Township hires and being able to basically see it from a different viewpoint. Ultimately, I'm here for the long run. We have 3 daughters, like I said before. My oldest is 14 years old. She just became a freshman in high school. Our middle child is in 6th grade, and our youngest just reached 1st grade. So I'm here because I want to make this a better community, just like everybody else is here tonight, because we're all concerned about our community. So hopefully you have some great questions for us tonight. Hopefully they don't knock me out too hard, but I look forward to being able to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, seeing that we, at this moment in time, have 2 candidates, I have a question that has been posed for either one of them. It says, our street needs repaving. Do we need to ask for it? To be paved, presumably.
I can address that. So you're not supposed to have to ask for your streets to be repaved. It's supposed to be part of the general plan and the budget. If the average lifespan of a road is 30 years, then you should be paving that percentage of roads every single year so that you have enough money in your general budget and there's not a huge spike. One of the things that I've seen, at least since I've been studying this budget, since the first time I ran for office in 2012, is we earmark money for roads, but we don't actually spend it all on the roads. We kind of use it to make up the general fund, which is a problem all municipalities have, so it's not something just unique to Holmdel. But ultimately, it's a price that has to be paid as part of the general budget. What I've also seen, and Barbara's also seen this in walking around, there's areas throughout the town which the roads and the curbs are horrendous. There's an area in Palmer Square. That's the red card already. I can see the yellow.
We didn't do it.
All right.
Finish
But
your
ultimately,
sentence.
you shouldn't have to ask for it, but it's something that needs to be done better.
Barbara, do you wish to
Yeah,
continue?
the township in the past has come up with a schedule of roads and when things will be done, and it hasn't really been stuck to, I'm sure, for budgetary reasons. But it doesn't hurt, as the former president of Country Woods, I can tell you, you need to stay in touch with your representatives and push for your neighborhood and make sure that they stay on that schedule for you.
The next question. Holmdel's Township Committee currently plans to meet its 110 low-income housing unit requirements by building 590 family rental units somewhere. This will increase Holmdel's student population by more than 30% with all of the commensurate costs. Do you have a better solution?
We do have a better solution. And it is one that requires more planning than has been done so far. We can get more credits for beds that are in nursing homes. You can get a 2-for-1 credit, cut your requirement in half. Veterans, I believe, get a 3-to-1 credit. These are things that require planning, and with the whole affordable housing requirement that Holmdel is obligated to fulfill legally, we know what's coming down the road. We know what's going to happen, and so it is something that needs to be planned in advance for.
So, can I add to that, or is that?
Yes.
You certainly may.
Okay, so you can't, every municipality has a constitutional obligation, I'm sorry I'm speaking fast, but the red card I'm trying to avoid, to have their fair share of affordable housing. So Holmdel's not immune to it. In fact, Holmdel, like a lot of municipalities that are more upscale and have a lot of rural land and a lot of employment, have higher threshold numbers. Middletown's outrageous, the amount of their fair share affordable housing obligation that they haven't met. So what happened is, there's a nonprofit organization that goes around suing municipalities to force them to comply with their fair share housing agreement. That happened to Holmdel along with a bunch of other municipalities. Holmdel has now proposed a settlement agreement with that nonprofit in order to meet what they believe is a settlement agreement for the fair share housing obligation. We're against it. We think it's a very builder-friendly plan, and the reason being is they're taking the affordable housing obligation, which is a fraction of what it should be, and spreading it out, and then the rest of it is being made up with all market rate. So what you have, as the question posed, is a lot more market rate units being put in. Behind Coles, where the TZ Green property is, they're proposing to put in 170 units, only 20 of them affordable housing. My office is right across the street from Coles. There's not, if the traffic is horrible as it is getting out of my office, put another 170 units in there, which is going to be 240 cars. It's just not going to happen. So we think there's a better spot. Yellow is morning, red is shut up, right?
You know, like a traffic light.
I went to Raritan High School, so it takes me a little while. But ultimately, the bottom line is this. A less builder-friendly option would have been to take one of the properties over on North Beer Street, which is a farm. It's an exiled farm, frankly. Everything around it is medical professional services. Rezone that to allow some type of assisted living facility where they have to put in, let's say, 150 beds that are for affordable housing or veterans or some fashion of that, and we get the credits satisfied that way. Builders aren't happy because they don't have all these other projects going on, but it's better for us. I was close,
Can I
right?
take 20 seconds, like a rebuttal sort of thing, but not a rebuttal? Just for comparison's sake, Palmer Square has 7 units per acre. The developments that they're proposing with this settlement agreement, they're all between 12 and 16 units per acre.
That's
And our township
apartment
committee
buildings.
is saying not quite high density. To me, that is high density. You're more than doubling what we see in a community like Palmer Square. That's crowded.
There is nothing with 16 units per acre in Holmdel right now.
Okay, let's start another question. The two Bell property pilot schemes, Bell Works, will produce a township windfall of $160 million over 30 years. What do you propose to do with this money?
Sure. So, can I explain first what the pilot is, so people may not understand what
That's
that
probably
is,
fair enough.
without getting beat up on the timing thing? So, what happens is, that in the law, there's an incentive that allows municipalities to help developers redevelop property that may be blighted or in need of redevelopment. And Bell Works was certainly one of those properties. And what it does is, in order to incentivize them to come in, which is really helping them to get the financing for the bank, they want to know what their costs are going to be over a long period of time. Not that we go ahead, get a CO, and all of a sudden the taxes spike through the roof and it's not in the budget or the pro forma that they got the financing based on. So these pilot programs serve a useful purpose. However, what happens when they do a pilot program in that agreement, the money that you would otherwise pay, so if you look at your tax bill, which I'm sure we all do, and you see that there's a certain percentage for the municipality, certain percentage for the county, and then a big giant chunk which goes to the school board. Roughly 60 to 68 cents per every tax dollar goes to the school board. But when you do a pilot program, 100% of that money goes to the municipality. So it's a huge windfall for the municipality. However, you're going to have to pay the piper at some point. All of that tax money is not going to the school board, yet the services are still going to be there. You have 220 units that are
Okay,
going
now I'm going to ask you to answer the question, I think if everybody kind of
Sure.
understood.
All right, now
What do you propose to do with this money?
That money has to
Theoretically,
go-
$160
That
million.
money has to go back to the taxpayer, at least in proportion to the amount that they're getting, I don't want to say screwed, but stiffed out of what should otherwise be paid towards the school taxes. Meaning, if they're not paying their fair share towards the school taxes, guess who else is paying for it? All of us. So that money should go back to us, or diverted to the school board in proportion to what it otherwise should be.
What happens with the pilot program is the school board has a budget and they tell the township committee this is, how much money we need. That money's still gonna be raised in taxes. The homes that are under this pilot program will not get counted in that tax base, which kind of pushes their share onto the rest of us. So that's in essence how you're paying more taxes that way. So while they can say, well, we haven't taken the school's money, the school will still get money. It's at our expense when they're doing it through this pilot program.
But the question is,
And what will we do?
what are you going to do with it? Are we having
I thought I answered.
a tax-free day?
A tax-free day?
There's a lot more than that, though.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to talk, though.
Bang.
That difference you're talking about, there's a lot more than that. And the concern in the community.
Jay?
Jay?
Okay.
Well, let's start, it's an important question. It's probably one of the more important questions of the whole night. And what
Our audience is welcome to write their questions on the cards, and we'll read them up here. Okay? Let's go on to the next
The
one.
next question would be, how would you spend or allocate the Toll Brothers Somerset 3.1 million abated tax dollars?
Well, if it's abated, we don't get it.
How can you spend money that's not paid to us?
I didn't write the question.
We pay to subsidize the pilot.
Okay, I don't quite understand that
Maybe
question.
if that will get answered for the person who was asking it in the course of the other questions tonight.
All right, I hope that we can somehow get that question answered, but I don't quite know how to explain it. Do you support opening up Holmdel Township taxpayer-paid for public lands and open spaces being leased to private sports clubs? In other words, is it fair for our parks to be leased to private sports clubs?
That question is for both of you.
For both of you.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure in what way you're talking about leasing.
It's just a hypothetical, is.
Private land.
I presume so.
I mean, other clubs have always come in and can reserve space on our fields. That's something that's always been done.
Yeah, you could rent, any organization can rent the school property, they could rent the school building, they could rent the fields. You just have to have adequate insurance in place, and then,
So I'm going to interject here. So I think what the person's asking the question is that we have a lot of other public space, open spaces. They're concerned that the town, to raise revenues, would like to consider leasing that space to a sports club so they can have their sports activity.
Well,
Open space is supposed to be passive open space, not, you know.
Our open space, especially open space that was purchased through the Open Space Fund, has legal requirements as part of that money being given for that space. So you can't just go in and say, hey, we really would love to have a sports club here, if it's violating the open space rules. So it's not to say, you know, we're against sports or some type of a facility, but you can't just pick and, you know, the nicest open space and say, hey, that's where we want it. You have to look at these backgrounds.
If I understand the,
Background
I'm sorry.
No.
If I understand the question, is let's say you take a spot that's preserved as open space and there's nothing on it or there's something on it. Whatever that open space is, if it was purchased and acquired with open space trust fund money, then it has to be available for recreational use in open space. It belongs to the people. Now, it can be rented out. Let's say it's an existing facility. It can be rented out to a private party, which I don't have a problem with per se, but it can't be exclusively rented out to the private party, where then it's wholly deprived from public use, and then you have to go through the private party to be able to access it. That, you can't, it's not whether someone's against it or not against it, it's illegal, you can't do it that way.
I think that answers what the person, hopefully that answered the purpose of the question. This is sort of in the same neck of the woods. What is your position on the maintenance and support of current recreation facilities in the township, both at the schools and the township?
Well, I'll address it, but
I agree on this one.
I played football for the University of Miami, and I am a big proponent of athletics in the context of supporting the student athlete, right? It was very beneficial to me growing up. I would not have been able to go as far as I've gotten in life without the benefits of interacting with sports. So I am a big proponent of supporting the facilities, however, doing it in a smart way. So it's all history now, but I guess there was last year there was an idea to go ahead and borrow money, which actually was bonded out, and then they've since pulled it back for so much as $3.5 million to put turf fields down in cross farms. I'm not necessarily against putting down turf fields. I have my questions as to the type of turf that would be used. I have also my concerns about what type of money is being used and where it could be obtained from. But I am a big proponent of, and I think what needs to happen is our facilities at Holmdel High School and throughout the schools are poor. My kids dance. I've gone to many other schools throughout the state. We are in the bottom threshold of what it appears. It's actually almost to the point of embarrassing, and we need to spend it. I know money's spent on the 2020 initiative. Hopefully they'll tell us the full text when they're able to get that money out. I see it, but I gotta finish. And I finished 20 seconds earlier on my opening speech. You're gonna have to hit me with that one.
Latest technology.
The next one has juice in it.
Why don't you let Barbara stick her oar in? Do you have an opinion on the matter?
Yes, last year when the artificial fields were being proposed at Cross Farm, I did not think that that was the right place for that, and I was part of the group that got signatures to oppose this. I also felt it was just a lot of money to spend on a particular group, and that was why I believe that it should go to a town-wide vote. I don't think everything that goes before the township needs to go to a town-wide vote, but when it's that much money and one particular group, I think we need to give the residents a bit of a say in what's going on. I have 3 daughters there in the back of the room. One is a junior in high school. One is on her phone. She's in 5th grade. And my 8th grader is back there. They've tried every sport under the sun between them, so we've been to all the facilities. Nothing has stuck with them, sports-wise, so I don't really, have a horse in the race, as they say. When this came up with the artificial fields, I did hours and hours of research on it, and that's what I tend to do, occupational hazard perhaps. And that was one of the reasons I felt it was a very divisive issue among the residents and among the professionals. And that's why I felt on that issue it should go to the hands of the.
Well, this next question just sort of follows right where you left off, is what is your position on building synthetic fields?
Okay, so, go ahead, I think she just answered the
Yeah.
question.
I think you sort of did too.
There is a lot of material out there on the health issues, and the EPA was doing a whole overview on all the studies, because some of them, were not quite valid. So they wanted to look at all the studies and really come out with a final decision on it. With the current administration, funds were cut back, and I don't know when that final study will be done, but I felt that there was enough there to have health concerns. There are enough people in your sporting industry there who will validate that there is a health issue with some types of fields.
So, I'm not against a synthetic field. What I do have my concerns on, I saw a special on E60, which is the ESPN version of 60 Minutes. And essentially, it focused on high school goalies and the high increase of throat cancer rates vis-a-vis other sports and other positions. And one of the things that they were trying to draw a correlation to was the fact that the synthetic fields, the newer synthetic fields, not the AstroTurf that we all remember back as kids, the newer synthetic fields has a crumbled rubber in it. It's basically a crumbled tire. They recycle the tire. So it was a great idea, won a lot of awards on being able to recycle tire, but ultimately the goalies have to dive down constantly in practice, and they're ingesting and inhaling this crumbled rubber. And it's raising the concern about the throat cancer issue. So synthetic fields, you'll see studies on them all the time. If you're going to have a lot of activity on a grass field, you're going to tear that grass field up, and a grass field is either going to look like garbage, or you're going to have to spend a lot of money replenishing it. So the numbers work out the same one way or the other. So that's why I'm not against the synthetic field. I just have questions about the crumbled rubber.
Okay, next question moves down the road a piece. What is your position on the current Firehouse situation? You realize that we no longer have a Firehouse on 520. It got sold to somebody who's going to use it to store their stuff while they make an addition onto the building next door or some such thing, but we don't have any more Firehouse down there. Do you believe there should be a Firehouse on the Bell Works property?
So,
Well,
go ahead.
I just want to go back to some of the history. Yeah, the Firehouse was sold, and a couple of months ago, our township committee voted to lease space at that Firehouse to put a fire truck there, I suppose. But that was what they had been doing for several years, and telling residents, no, there is a fire truck there and we have coverage, but there was no equipment in that Firehouse. There were not men available to work that fire truck. So yes, there was a truck there, but I don't think that was the kind of fire protection the residents were expecting that they were getting. Now, townships have requirements, there's always laws and health, as to the type of coverage they need, how many firehouses per square mile. So, that's one guideline we have to make sure we follow. Sometimes that's done by using services from other towns, which we may not like. I think the fact that the part of town over by Main Street where this firehouse is that we're referring to, they had coverage for many years, and we were good. Everybody was good. Now we have a whole part of town that feels like they're being left without the quality coverage that they used to have. And if we can get the manpower, which you have to have also a minimum number of volunteers, all you guys here, go home, think about it. Get people to volunteer. We can't run the firehouse without the manpower.
Larry?
The way it's proposed and the way Bell Works is going, and by the way, all things considered, it's going to look great. It's already starting to look great. Actually, I drove by at night and it looked beautiful seeing it all lit up in its glory. Ultimately, the amount of activity that's going to be there, we need to have more fire protection because we're just waiting for a disaster to happen and not have the capacity to be able to deal with it. So that's something that has to be looked at. I know they said they've studied it, but they've studied it before Bell Works was in full gear. Bell Works is not even a fraction of where it's going to be at in full speed when it's at full capacity. And right now, all we got in lieu of the firehouse that we did have on 520 is I think a garage on the Vonage property with with little or no support. A volunteer fire community is not just a truck and a hook and ladder. It's the people. And the people and the volunteers are the ones that make it up. So we got to support our volunteers more than anything. The equipment itself could be, it's a secondary issue.
By the way, those of you who long ago worked at Bell Labs realize there was a fire department at Bell Labs, so potentially the bays or wherever they stored all these fire trucks are conceivably still there, so it wouldn't be a matter of building a new building. But I don't know more about it than that.
It has to be. I mean, even calling it a metro bird, it's a city on and of itself.
Okay, we've gone around the corner now from the Firehouse to what is your position on the New Jersey natural gas regulator issue and JCP&L? As most of you may know, there is a proposal before the State Bureau of Public Utilities to put a very large gas regulator on Holmdel Road north of Bonnage, and it's in the front yard of the solar panel facility. What would you do to aid in the opposition of it if that is your position?
Let me just qualify. They actually put down JCP&L, which actually talks to about the...
New Jersey natural gas.
Well, no, that'd
Well,
be
it's
New
two different
Jersey,
issues.
two
So
different
which
issues.
one
The other
is
one
the
is the
question?
rage
Oh,
and
the rage thing.
and the power
Right,
cables.
yeah, so there actually are two issues
so
here.
let's
So let's just go with the gas
bifurcate
regulator first.
Okay, the gas regulator, I attended the hearings in Holmdel in opposition to their project. Jay and our audience provided a lot of technical information on that, which was appreciated, and that's one of the things I love about Holmdel, is our educated population who, on certain issues, will take the time and will do the research and will come to you and say,
Louder.
I'm just saying how much I appreciate the residents like yourself who have knowledge and, come to us with information or with their historical knowledge of different things. And if you take the time, to listen and hear it through, you can actually, incorporate that to what maybe the gas company is telling you and kind of figure out what's really going on. And so, yes, I was opposed to that project.
So what would you aid in the opposition to the New Jersey gas regulator, which the township has
It's
taken?
gone forward now, it's in the courts, so.
It's kind of out of our hands
Yeah,
this
but when
moment.
it, was here, I was vocally speaking out against it and attending those hearings.
Larry?
Yes, if I could add to it, thank you. So as far as rage and the gas regulator are concerned, all the candidates are unanimous in their opposition against it. So even though the other two gentlemen aren't here tonight, they are adamantly against it. They've spoken out at every opportunity. I've actually seen Greg Von Temple at one of the events giving a statement. So we're all in agreement against it. However, there's just a difference of what we believe can be done. As an attorney, I can tell you this. I represented a group of citizens, bipartisan citizens, called Save Sandy Hook many years ago that sought to stop the federal government and a private developer that got a deal to basically privatize Fort Hancock on Sandy Hook. And when I came into that, and it's very similar now to what's going on with Rage, and it's very similar to what's going on with New Jersey Natural Gas, I explained to the group a very particular piece of advice that I got when I was a young lawyer. It says, when the facts are on your side, you pound the facts. When the law's on your side, you pound the law. And when neither are on your side, you pound the damn table. And what we're going to do, if we're elected with New Jersey Natural Gas and with Rage, is over our dead body, they're going to put those stinking things through our community. It's going to ruin everyone within the general area's property values. It's without question. And there's ways to do it. One of the things that should be done, which is not being done right now, and I understand that it's caught up in the Office of Administrative Law, but one of the things that should be done right now is Rage has to get the easement from New Jersey Transit in order, I'm sorry, not Rage, JCP&L has to get an easement from New Jersey Transit down their railroad line in order to put these stinking poles in with this 230 kilovolt line. They were supposed to, they actually bought the easement a while ago and they lapsed on the payments. Okay, now they're coming back to New Jersey Transit, dangling the millions of dollars, offering to try to get this money. Right now, there should be a resolution to go ahead, telling the governor to veto the minutes of New Jersey Transit if they're going to think for a moment to give this easement and sell us out for this money.
Now, one of the things Larry's not telling you about his background, which I've learned and I'm happy to have him as my partner in this race, he was one of the first people researching this JCP&L project for the county, and that's why he knows a lot of the background information. So while he's not out there like, talking, he's back in the office doing all the research, sending it out to, the people who are involved and who are decision makers, so.
Back in summer of last year, I submitted it to every municipality of elected officials of my research and what should be done, and the issue, the question about the easement and whether it's been lapsed or not, which I just found out it wasn't.
The next question, to both of you. If elected, who would you vote for mayor and why?
Well, let me ask you, let me take a stab at this. I can't stand our form of government. I think it's corrupt, and it's not for any blame for the current elected officials. It's been there long before they got here. But we elect at large 5 committee members who then get in the back room on January 1st and pick amongst themselves who's going to be the mayor. What is that? I mean, it's nonsense. It's the most undemocratic thing I've ever heard of. And so ultimately, there's 2 ways to get rid of that form of government. You can go around and get about 2,500 signatures of registered voters to put it on the ballot, or the township committee could go ahead and put a organization together of volunteers that will study the issue and see whether or not you should put the ballot question up for a vote. I think it'll change, and we should have a directly elected mayor by the people, not by the politicians. As far as who's going to be mayor, if we're both elected, what I can tell you is this: I'll let you know when I find out who's going to accomplish the agenda that we want to put forward. And the one that's willing to do that is the one that's going to be the fugazi mayor for the next year until we get rid of the form of government.
Yeah. It's early to make a decision, and I don't think that we want to televise to any of the other candidates and make them think that they're a shoo-in.
Just like we got to earn your vote, they got to earn our vote.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Okay. This is a question for Larry.
So you get 2 minutes.
Should we vote for him given his lack of attendance at TC, zoning, and planning board meetings? And how can you claim to know the issues?
Well, I'll let everyone judge from what they just heard in the past half hour of whether or not I know the issues. As far as attending township committee meetings, I do attend them. I haven't attended a lot of them regularly because I'm an attorney. I'm a sole practitioner. I do a lot of land use stuff and a lot of municipal court stuff, so I'm working at night. In fact, I was 5 minutes late to this event tonight because I was working. So whether or not if someone wants to hang their vote up on if I'm there or not on every single meeting, that's great. I would just question whether or not if that's the sole factor as to whether someone's going to vote for me. They're looking at it a little too narrow-minded, in my opinion. They should look at the bigger picture and what they hear from me on the issues. What I will also say is, at the end of the day, there's differing opinions here of what we've talked about, the direction we want to go as far as the development and obviously the form of government. Those are the issues you should be focusing on, whether or not we should be on who you're going to elect this year.
Okay. Next, will you improve the township website so there's more and better and up-to-date, I will add, information?
Yeah, I use the website a lot, and I'm constantly poking around. I don't find it that easy to use myself. For the main things I go to, of course now, I know where they are, but if it's something totally new, I'm just, the organization to me is not as clear as it could be when you're logically looking for a certain topic.
I agree with you. It's very backlogged, and the problem is no one's been given a job to update the website, and unfortunately, that's something that needs to happen. Right now, the way it stands, I look to Jeannie Wall and I look to Debbie Brew to find out what the heck's going on in town. They're the ones that know instantly, just by clicking on their posts. But ultimately, that's something that should happen, and there's no shortage of volunteers in Holmdel. We have a lot of committees that we put together with volunteers. We certainly could put one together to basically have people update that site without a cost to the taxpayers.
Yeah, again, we have educated people in this town, and I think we need to utilize that.
Next one, will you repeal the 3-minute limit on residents' questions at TC meetings?
Well,
Okay,
can I just say one thing? For you two with the buzzer? No. Right now, maybe later. I'll talk to you at the end.
So here's my feeling, and I've said this out on the township.
Yeah, but we can laugh.
I it when you have a meeting where there's a hot topic and the courtroom there is full of people. I understand that. Nobody wants to be there for 4 hours. It gets very repetitive. But there are so many nights when there are 10 or less people there. And they're usually the people who are very enthusiastic about the issues and are on top of things, and they're the ones coming up with their research and their facts, and they have really good questions, and they have opinions and suggestions. And I think we need to let them speak. I don't see why they're getting a time limit. We had a gentleman, a senior gentleman up at the last township meeting talking about his taxes, and that is such a big issue for the seniors in this town because they don't get a break on their taxes. And he, you know, he wasn't being outrageous. I think he was being very reasonable, and he was very emotional about it. The 3 minutes was up, and all of a sudden it's like, your 3 minutes is up. And I think half the audience, like, we all looked at each other like, yeah, that's not the right time to do that, you know? Hear him out. Let him say what he came here to say. He's not there every 2 weeks complaining about something. So I think we definitely need to rethink how we're using that 3-minute rule.
I'll give you the honest answer aside from the joke, although, anyway, you pay enough in taxes. I'd be damned if someone's going to tell me to shut up if I have an important issue to talk about. I don't think there should be any time limit on it. However, the mayor who presides over the meetings has the ability to shut the time down at any point they want. So I would leave it to the discretion of the mayor, hopefully the real mayor elected by the people, but either way, that's the person that presides over the meeting. They have control over it. That should be the one that has it instead of some artificial or arbitrary time limit.
And when you run for office, part of that is hearing the residents. You don't just get to hear what you want to hear or hear what your friends have to say. It's really listening to everybody. And that public portion session, that's your right. That's your opportunity, and you deserve to have it.
And adding to that, thank God CILU's actually, Mr. Goldstein's been putting the videos up on YouTube, but that shouldn't be something that has to fall on. If he gets a hiccup or doesn't want to do it anymore, frankly, most municipalities, at least the ones that are progressive enough, have it already done. It should be videoed and put up. Some of them even have it on cable access channels. It should be there, and it should be there, I think, on YouTube. That way anyone can have an opportunity to find out what's going on at any given time in their town. And that goes for the planning board meetings, zoning board meetings, and the municipal.
We're coming down to the last 2 questions, okay?
Yeah. This person in the room is interested in preserving open space. He understands that there is a tax for this purpose. Have we finished paying off our debt for the Chase Tract so that he can anticipate getting more open space?
So the answer to the question is no, we're not done paying it off, at least what I've seen from the 2017 budget. I don't know if they're going to retire that debt, but ultimately the open space, and just to give everyone a background, what we do is there was a ballot question that went on, we all voted for it, we voted in favor of paying an extra tax. It's a very minuscule tax per person, but collectively it allowed the municipality to borrow money to acquire property and preserve it as open space. Preserve it as open space and developers can't develop it. That's the method. So I'm a big proponent of open spaces. That's our biggest remedy against the builders and the builder remedy suits for the high density housing. But ultimately, if we're short of it, a referendum could go on the ballot again, but ultimately when that's done, we should be focused, and our master plan should be certainly concentrated on getting more open space preservation in mind.
Yeah, when I first moved here, that was 11 years ago, Larry Fink was on the township committee, and he was such a huge proponent of preserving open space. And, you know, now he supports us in our candidacy, which we're very proud to have his support, because he has done so much for Holmdel in this area. And now looking back, even seeing what our affordable housing obligation is and how that's determined, like all this open land comes into play. So it was really helpful to have Larry focusing on that issue. And once he was off the committee, that was kind of lost. And I think that's something that Holmdel needs to bring back up into their priorities. Getting funding from county, from state, from parks, whatever we can. And then putting all that together with what we can afford in our town and deciding, you know, what properties we need to preserve here.
And it's a bipartisan issue. Every one of those properties that were preserved as open space were done by Democrats and Republicans, so I think we're all in favor of it.
Be aware that there is a open space tax referendum question on your ballots on November 7th. It hasn't been publicized too much, but it is the only question on the ballot on November 7th. I don't have the particulars at my fingertips, but when you get your ballot in the mail, which should be in the next couple of weeks, be sure and read that and be aware that we're coming close to having paid off our costs for the land that the town has bought recently, so that it would be very nice to preserve the rest of the open space that we have here in town, and of course that's one of CILU's reasons for existence. The last question is, what, if anything, will you do for the senior population in town regarding programs? And do you think there is ample attention to their needs and concerns? Every day we get older.
She speaks for herself.
I got more white hair than you do.
You got more hair.
You know, it's easy in Holmdel to reach out to the senior population and find out what do they want. We have a few senior developments. We have the Half Century Club. So I think, again, it's just a matter of communicating and finding out what do you need. And I know this whole survey was just put out there, but as we were ringing doorbells and speaking to seniors, they weren't happy with the survey, and they didn't feel it was specifically asking questions, or enough questions, addressed to them. But I do think it's something that that's easily worked on. I don't find providing what our seniors need recreationally to be difficult. It's easy to find out and to put it into play.
So now that we've come to the end of my pile of questions, unless somebody's sitting on a piece of paper that I don't know about, Karen?
Well, actually, each candidate
Right,
gets 2
then-
minutes for closing remarks.
Right.
So since Barbara went first, Larry, it's your opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Again, I don't want to rehash what I already talked about, but you have to boil down the decision you have to make this November. All 4 candidates are nice people, so you don't have to worry about those issues. All 4 of them are, have families, they care deeply about Holmdel. The big division in where we lie and rest on our issues here has to do with the direction of development in this town and the form of government that we have. The form of government that I'm proposing, Barbara and I are proposing, would allow the towns to become what's called a Faulkner Act type town. What that is the state of New Jersey created this because municipalities had communities that wanted more of a say in how things are done. When you elect to become a Faulkner Act type town, in addition to being able to directly elect your mayor and have at-large committee people, if those elected representatives are not responsive to your concerns, you have the ability to actually block legislation or pass legislation on your own by way of a referendum. And you only need about 10% of signatures of registered voters on it. So it's a very powerful way. The only thing you basically can't do that the town could do under the Faulkner Act is borrow money, but you certainly could stop them from borrowing money if you feel that they're not spending your money wisely. So that's a huge fire stop. It's a more democratic form of government, which I think everyone should be in favor for. And the issue with the affordable housing is it's bigger than you can possibly imagine, because ultimately, if you think about the amount of those units that are coming in, if there's 500 new units coming in, let's say the average one has 2 kids, that's 1,000 spike to the school district. They may all come in bringing around the same age groups. So that's going to be, at least if you do the numbers, 25 students per teacher. You've got about 40 teachers that are going to have to be added on, or the classes are going to have to be overcrowded. Where's the classrooms that these 40 teachers are going to teach in? So that means you have to expand the facilities. So I'm a big proponent of open space to stop the builders. A lot of towns have done that don't have fair share housing plans in place. But ultimately, it's either pay that little amount for open space or pay dearly in your school tax, which represents roughly right now 67 to 68% of our tax dollars. And you can't offset it with just municipal taxes coming in from those towns. The League of Municipalities, which is every municipality belongs to it, Republican and Democratic control, basically says for every dollar of residential tax revenue that we get in, you spend $1.25 in services. It's just not a profitable form. Now, you can't get away from it. We all got to live somewhere. But ultimately, it's something that is going to hurt us if we don't change the direction we're going in. So I hope you consider that when you go and vote on November 7th. Thank you.
Barbara, Larry spoke for about 3.5 minutes, so you'll have the same amount of time.
Sorry, thank you for not buzzing.
Larry should be a professor. He loves explaining what I'm sharing his information. Well, you do it well, so it's understandable. And I think that's, you know, really important when you have representatives, is that they can explain things, the do's and the do-nots, and why some things can be done and why some things cannot be done that we might otherwise love to do. A lot of the issues that you raised through these questions tonight are things that people are bringing up to us when we're out constantly ringing doorbells. So your concerns are not, you're not alone in your concerns, okay? They are, you know, town-wide concerns, and I think that's a great thing because it shows we are almost one in the town. We have similar concerns, and that to me is very positive for the future, that we will be able to work together and addressing them if we are doing the right planning and looking ahead. So I'd really like to thank you all for coming here tonight. It was great. Again, thanks to CILU for providing the opportunity. We absolutely appreciate it.
Is everybody allowed to clap when we're done?
If you're done, that's it.
Theoretically, Greg and Rocco were supposed to appear, but I haven't seen them yet. What I would like to suggest is that we wiggle around for 5 minutes or so and have some refreshments and so forth, and then regroup. And if the school board candidates could perhaps go in a corner and decide the order in which they wish to make their presentations, whether it's alphabetical, by age, by hair color or something, I don't care. Yes, John G.
Can the questions that have been posed tonight be presented to the Republican parties in a formal way? Just so that they have a chance to respond, maybe in written form?
I suppose we could do that.
It's just manpower and work.
Oh, okay.
I'll send you the list. You can welcome to send me that if you think you can get a response.
Well,
Are we going in order, or are we?
You decide.
Well,
I don't care.
typical of my life, okay, the women take control, okay? I actually would have called, I was going to call people based on how they RSVP to me,
Yes,
okay?
tell them to do that.
So, which is what I'm going to do.
you know, if you wish, I can take those questions and type them up for you. But I think under CILU letterhead maybe reflect something.
It's just me to go through. Most of these things are already. It's just the minutes, so I will do that.
You're right, because I think these are two questions that people have. You should at least know.
Somebody just handed me this one. It's rather long with questions.
Okay, just a thought. Because I think that way they become aware.
I just don't speak tonight.